Hey, so welcome to the AASP-PA legislative podcast. So if you can see sitting in here, and I'm going to go around to my left is John Kolick. He was our lobbyist up in Harrisburg, and we'll let him and kind of tell you a little bit about what the lobbyist does and what he's done for our association. And directly across from me to your left on the screen is Representative Seth Grove from the 196th District.
Yep, the Fighting 196.
Yeah. So welcome.
Welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
It is.
Awesome setup.
Yeah, and you do a podcast too, right, Seth?
I do. Grove Unleashed. We're on YouTube now. We do video, and then obviously Spotify, Google Podcasts. I think there's like one more Android. I don't know. There's a little more out there.
And how long have you been doing that?
Beginning of this year, maybe. It's been about a year, and it's gotten pretty good traction. You know, my colleagues across the aisle, House Democrats, will listen to it, try to figure out what we're doing.
Secretive.
So it's been pretty good. I was at a national conference this past week, and a couple of people are, hey, when are you gonna do your podcast? I'm like, I don't know you, where you're from, and do you not have a life? But it's fun. We have a good time.
Yeah, it's all about, man. So, John, good to have you here. We've talked about getting you down here to do a recording. Tell us a little bit about what you do for the association up in Harrisburg and why it's so important to have you up there.
Well, thanks very much, Brett. A lobbyist is, in the case of AASP-PA, is the voice of the members in the state capitol. And what I mean by that is I deal with the issues that come up in the House and the Senate. Also, when necessary, we deal with the various departments that affect the industry, like PennDOT, DEP, particularly on the emissions program. So kind of the eyes and ears for the industry. I mean, you know, Brett, you run a business. You don't have time to be looking every day and seeing what's going to be happening in the state house that day.
No.
And that's how lobbyists began, basically representing groups of people in front of government. In the case of our group, obviously, you know, across the state, I'm sure we know there's 17,000 safety inspection stations as an example of the size of the organization. But the actual reality of the situation is, and I'm sure Seth can elaborate on this, you've got hundreds of associations out there. You have several thousand registered lobbyists for every group that you can imagine, all doing the same thing we're doing, watching out for their industries or watching out for their companies or, you know, watching out for their associations. So part of the challenge is to, first of all, identify the issues before they really become a problem.
Right.
When a legislator indicates he's going to introduce a bill, they have to put out a memo that says what the bill is going to say. And that's the first signal to us that if it's something we're concerned about. Like years ago, there was an effort to get rid of the safety inspection program.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So immediately reach out to the people who are inducing it, try to talk through whatever issues they may have. And that's just one example. Seth, I don't know how many bills are introduced in the House every year.
2,500 or something, like over 2,500 individual bills. Think about that.
And, you know, I think when Mike and I have done these recordings, you know, I do not envy your job, Seth. I do not. There's no way.
And by the way, I don't read 2,500 bills.
You have people for that.
Well, I read the ones that actually come up for a vote.
Okay.
It's a small percentage. It's darn near impossible to read every single bill.
Yep.
So the main job for us, you know, for the association and for me as the lobbyist, is to stay on top of the issues, stay on top of the bills. Doesn't mean that just because you go to a legislator and say we don't like that bill, we may still introduce it.
Right, right.
So then you come up with a strategy of how to educate other members on committees and the leadership in the House and the Senate
of why we like it or don't like it,
and why, you know, you come up with arguments. The best arguments are if constituents aren't going to like the bill or negatively impact constituents, but you got to be on top of things and coming up with arguments. And part of, for me, the important part of the job is reaching out to our members, to our board, to really explain to me the various details of issues and how they affect things.
Yeah.
So it's I won't say 24/7 job for us, not like Seth's job is 24/7, but it's definitely all hands on deck, whether they're in session or not in session. Because once an issue appears in the newspaper, it's often too late to do anything about it. So we, and one of the things that I'm happy we're here together, because I'm interested in Seth's guidance on this, particularly these days. I started lobbying for this group in 1986.
Yeah, it's been quite some time.
A lot of changes, a lot of challenges, and a lot of differences in terms, obviously, of the legislature. In terms of communicating with the legislature, when I started, there wasn't social media.
Right.
I think the internet came in about 5 years after I started. But it's what catches the attention of legislators and what's effective. And for our group, I'm still, to me, back to the basics. It's the interrelationships that members have with their individual legislators that make the difference. If I can walk into a legislator's office, case of Seth, he knows I work for this group, and we'll get into why he knows in a minute. But then there may be a legislator in another part of the state that obviously Brett doesn't have
Connection
his
with,
chapter with.
but somebody else might.
If I go in and can say, well, Joe Colucci in Williamsport, have that local member and have that local connection, and the legislature realizing who that is. But that takes a lot of work to develop those kind of relationships.
And that just doesn't happen overnight. That happens of years of building that relationship. Just like in business, you have to build a relationship.
And, the ideal situation is, from a lobbyist perspective, we talked to one of our members, who I went to high school with, Representative Smith. I go to Representative Smith's church, or he's my customer, or I've known the family. Those are it doesn't mean that you go in and if you're wrong on the issue, that's going to change the day. But remember, going back to the fact that we're dealing with hundreds of other associations, it's what the people care about.
Yeah. So hearing that, Seth, I mean, when the importance of having a lobbyist coming into your office, and we've stressed this a little bit, Mike and I, on this, talking about legislation, the importance of an association. The more members make a louder voice. So if you have one person coming in your office representing 400 or 500 people in the state, constituents, rather than 4 or 5 individuals coming to you, does that make a big difference in what you're going to listen to and maybe sway your thoughts on certain things? I mean, what tell us a little bit about that process and what is important to that?
Yeah. So first, on lobbyists, they get a bad name. Like, they're the underhanded, seedy, like,
scratch my back. Hey, here's a little Benny for you.
Right. It's really not that maybe at one point it was. I mean, we still struggle with corruption issues here in the great state of Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
It's
right?
politics, right?
But the role of the lobbyist is to advocate for your position. So I know when a lobbyist is coming in, they're for this group. Me, as someone who has to represent everybody and every interest at all times, the goal is to find out what's the other side. And then you get information, and then you make the best educated decision with the information you have at that time.
That's exactly what we do as an independent repair shop.
Right. So, and the key is the information at the time, because things change over time. You're like, why'd I vote for that? Oh yeah, it was this then. Now this other whatever. So it's kind of difficult because things change imminently anymore. in Pennsylvania, around the world, in your local communities and stuff like that. So a lot of it is trust, right? When you have a handshake deal, when you have that understanding, and lobbyists understand that they have to give you accurate information. You never want to be caught lying or giving misinformation and stuff like that, because that's your credibility, right?
Exactly.
It's how you build your brand and your trust and your prestige, everything about you as a lobbyist. So it's critically important you provide the information. And good lobbyists like John, if they don't know, they're going to go back. Let me go back and ask. Yeah. John's not an expert in everything. I am not. I'm not repairing cars. That's not a healthy thing. If you see me at Brett's shop, run.
Hey, I'm at my shop too. Don't let me down on the floor.
Right. Like it's not good. And you don't expect to know everything, but the goal is, hey, all right, what's your question? Let me go back to the industry and I will find that out for you. And then after a while, you build some rapport, right? You understand the industry, and that's critically important. We have so many new members in the General Assembly anymore. We do not have a historical perspective of a lot of stuff.
Right.
So having someone who not only understands an industry, but how things got to where they are now is very rare in Harrisburg. I mean, new lobbyists, I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy.
And speaking of, I remember when you first got elected, and that was what, 2009?
Yeah.
And I remember you when you first got elected. Now you're holding a chair commit.
Yeah,
you're like the Republican chair of the appropriations.
Yeah, budget finance stuff.
So
which I enjoy.
You've moved up in the ranks.
Yeah. It takes a little while to get there, but a lot of work, a lot of fundraising, a lot of other stuff. But it's enjoyable, and especially with it's an elected position within your caucus, so it's very humbling to have your caucus's backing and support, and
your peers think that much of you.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So what made you make that leap into politics? You had mentioned you have a lot of new people coming in.
Right. So, and that started from if you remember the pay raise, right? The midnight pay raise.
Was that the discussion?
2007 time frame? Yeah. So after that point, there's been a large turnover. Probably after the pay raise for the good. I will say a lot of dead weight has lost Harrisburg. And believe me, having new people in, new ideas, fresh perspective, they want to go, it's good.
It is good.
It's good. But you have to weigh that with a historical perspective and understanding. You have to weigh the two, right? So we've had new people in every single year. I worked for, Stan Saylor out of college, worked for Congressman Todd Platts, and I came back to work for Keith Gillespie after a couple of years. And after a couple of years, when I picked up the phones dealing with state issues from when I went from Stan's office to Keith's office and the couple-year gap, it was the same issues.
Nothing was getting
unchanged. I was like, can we do something about this? Hearings are nice, reports are nice, and believe me, we are great at committee hearings and reports. Phenomenal. It's great. We're amazing. But it doesn't move the ball forward. You got to introduce legislation. You have to introduce a bill. You got to figure out how to fix stuff, and you have to have the conversations and talk to people. You've had so many hearings on these issues. Let's go do something. And that was kind of my trigger. I never wanted to be an elected official. I saw how much work they have to do, nights, weekends, always on the phone, time away from their family and stuff. But I came to the point of, you guys need to start dropping bills and start moving stuff and start being aggressive on the legislative side. So my predecessor, Bev Macrath, decided not to run again. There was a kind of a special, because she removed her name off the ballot.
I remember that time.
7 put their name in. I won out of the 7. And the rest is kind of history. And I've been highly focused on trying to find the solutions. And you're not going to, you never get 100% of what you want in the General Assembly, ever. I don't remember anybody ever getting 100. If you get 90, you're a rock star.
Rock star.
You get 50, that's
good.
That's really good. So you move the ball as far as you get. Because again, it's a big state, big perspectives. And most people think it's a partisan conflict. It's actually geography that usually you get broken down on geographic issues, right? And you think okay, the Democrats in Philadelphia and the Democrats in Pittsburgh, they're all Democrats, so they get along.
No, they don't. Everybody has their different opinions. I don't care where you're from.
Right. And it's a big state. different viewpoints and stuff. So it's tough to find that consensus at times. So you just got to work. You got to find out where people are at. You got to find out where stakeholders are at, and you just got to constantly move. And I always tell people, you can never take your foot off the gas ever in Harrisburg. Once you just lean it up a little bit, your bill passes you by. You may not get a shot of that. So you just got to keep on it and keep focused.
Yeah. And like I said, I remember the days of the early Federal Right to Repair Act back in the early 2000s in this association, going down to D.C. and sitting in those subcommittee, not the committee, the subcommittee hearings. This, I guess those are what they listen to a bill before they get launched into the committee.
Right. And
then it takes more precedence. But, you talk about something that's fucking boring.
Right.
Sorry.
No, there's
I'm like, I could not do this job. And then there was, you talked about it, one old Senator Dingell out of Detroit. So who's in his back pocket?
Yeah.
The big manufacturers.
Right.
I don't envy your job, Seth. Kudos. Kind of how I got into this position as the president of the association. I just kind of opened my mouth and started putting things in place, and guess what? Here I am.
I thought you might have missed a meeting.
That's
the other one, right?
I didn't miss a meeting.
Who's not here? Oh, Brett.
This is kind of one of those that you open your mouth, you start you start implementing and leading, and putting this organizing. Well, guess who's running the association? My wife was not happy about that.
Well, it happens.
But I didn't want to. I like you. I wanted to see it progress and not just stay stagnant or die.
Right. And it's critically important to stay engaged. I can't tell you. Having people if nobody contacts you, you think it's not a problem.
Right. And that's, I was going to get to that, keep talking about that.
Right. If you're in Harrisburg, bills are running, you don't hear anything from anybody, it passes, and then it gets signed into law, and then someone comes like, why'd you pass this? This is an awful bill. They're like, I didn't know. You didn't come. Like, nobody talked to us about how awful this is, and now your business has to close.
Like you said,
like that.
You might not have had all the facts.
Right.
You're going with what you feel is the best at that time. So it is important for a legislator or even lobbyists like John to come up to you and as a representative for the constituents of the Commonwealth to let you know their opinions.
Right. And I view it as a two-way street too. Having that local connection of someone in the industry, I can go to you and say, hey, you might not know this is popping up. What do you think? Is this good, bad, indifferent? Do you not care? Just give that feedback and stuff. Because again, you're dealing in any voting day, you could be dealing with environmental policy, school policy, election code, tax code, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, there was one thing I saw on your committees. So what is a committee on committees? What is that?
Oh, so that is...
I'm sorry. It caught my eye and
it's
I had
the
to
king
ask.
of committees. No, that committee sets up who's on what committee.
Okay.
So that committee is kind of formed at the beginning, and then they do the recommendations to the speaker on who should be on the different committees.
I didn't know if it was the hierarchy of the King's Royal Court to say, well, no, you're overruling that committee. All right, that's a guy. It just caught my eye out, the name of it.
Yeah, and then we have the Rules Committee. So if you want to introduce a rule to the House, you have to go through that committee to do that. And then that plays a prominent part when you send a bill to the Senate and the Senate sends it back. They'll amend it. It goes to that committee first before it comes back on the House floor. So that is it's run by the majority leader. Typically, it is heavily slanted for the majority party. And the rule in that committee is you do whatever the leader says to get it out.
Yeah.
So,
so John, you've been doing this for quite some time for the association. You've mentioned a lot of things have changed. But your role up there has not. And you're not only dealing with the House of Representatives, you're dealing with the Senate too. So you're dealing on both sides, and you also have to play both sides of the aisle, so to speak. So how does that challenge for anybody in your position?
That's a good question. I've seen and worked with every configuration of either the Democrats controlling the Senate or Republicans controlling the Senate, or halfway through the year it changes. And so I think the key, at least my belief is, you got to build a reputation and stick to telling the truth to legislators so that you can, get a reputation that you can talk to anybody and get a reputation that you're going to be fair to the legislator. We're not here to embarrass anybody. They may not agree with you on something, but at least have the opportunity to get in and talk to a legislator to describe your side of the issue. And I think the other major change that I've seen since from the 1980s is every year, Seth mentioned this big turnover of new legislators. Every class of House or Senate members is increasingly more independent. Back in the day, there was still some semblance of the party leaders could kind of dictate what forcefully guide votes in terms of on a particular issue. It doesn't work that way anymore.
So it isn't like, hey, I got this bill, but you have that bill. So let me, you vote for mine, I'll vote for yours. It's not like that, Seth?
There's some of that. Some people are very focused on the issues. Like they're in this perspective, they're only voting this way. Some people want to have no matter what, they just want to have the most conservative or most lefty voting record. Doesn't matter what it is, what happens. That's just where they want to be. It is a big high school. Sometimes people don't vote for bills because they just don't like the person.
So the clicks carry through up the Harrisburg.
Yeah, it does.
And one of the things I want to say about Seth, congratulations on being appropriations chair. And he's, as usual, pretty, self-effacing, because that's the most powerful committee in the legislature.
I was going to ask, is that what does that committee entail? So,
well, the state budget and all the spending for the state goes through there. In every other bill, regardless if it's budget related, has to go through the appropriations committee. And I've had experience with your predecessor where we had some issues that people forgot about the fact that appropriations committee can deal with the substance of a bill.
Mm-hmm.
So basically everything that happens has to go through Seth's committee in Harrisburg.
That's pretty powerful.
So
I can throw a hissy fit and say, we're not doing anything. No.
And one of the things I wanted to say is that, watch Seth. Well, I'm really starting to sound like an old timer. I guess I am. I watched Seth when he first came in the House, met him down here, actually, I think for the first time in York County with one of your meetings. Mm-hmm. He drew the line of what his principles were, stuck to them, sometimes not always popular. And at the end of the day, that's what the members of the House gravitated towards. To your
honesty, it's the key.
You know what? It's so much easier just to be honest.
Yeah.
Because then you don't have to remember what you tell people. I've had politicians walking around. I'm like, how do you remember telling this group one thing and this group the other?
Yeah.
Just be honest about it.
Yeah.
You're not there to be loved.
No, you're there. You're there.
You're there to do a job.
You're there to do a job representing the 196th district.
Right.
District. And all the people in it, whether they all agree with you or not. You're representing them as one voice in Harrisburg. And John comes up representing an association, multiple members as one voice. Mm-hmm. And that makes a statement. And we've mentioned that in politics. Unfortunately, one or two voices are going to be not heard over one voice representing 400 or 500 or 4,000 or 5,000.
I tell you, the louder you scream, the more you get noticed. Yeah. I can't tell you. I can't sell that point. Like if there's something important, you calling, okay, one person called about it. You had 10, 20, 30. And I'll tell you, a lot of members think like 10 emails. Like I represent 68,000 people. Some people are like, oh, I got 10 emails on this. Or I got a lot of emails on this. I'm like, how many did you get? 1,000? Like, I got like 10. I'm like, how many? 10 out of, like, so just put in perspective, like, you could probably sway a vote over 10 emails.
Yeah, and that we've mentioned that don't be afraid to reach out to you guys.
No.
You guys are an open book. You're supposed to be representing us. So, the misconception that people are afraid to come up and talk to you all should not be, because you're representing us as the people of this county or this district. They should be able to talk to you.
Yeah, there's one caveat. If you see me in a grocery store somewhere and I have my daughter and I'm like running through, she's got to go to the bathroom, like, don't stop me then.
Don't stop and talk to me then.
Any other time, wait till afterwards.
That's a good rule.
Right.
That's a good rule.
Right. Sometimes a family emergencies kind of take precedent,
Yeah.
Well, back to that's great. Back to the what we were talking about earlier about the independence of a lot of legislators. In a way, that really makes the grassroots effort from an association even more important than it was, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Because, typically a chairman of a committee, whatever that committee might be, he's not going to bring a bill up unless he has the votes, right? But that doesn't always mean that it's a done deal. Mm-hmm. And let's say it's something that hurts you. Part of the job is to go around and talk to every committee member. And what I think a good time to bring in what you've done down here in York County, Brett. I don't know when the first legislative night was.
It goes back to the 90s. Gary Bankos, Keith Stout, I think, started these legislative nights back then. And they kind of opened that door to have that rapport with the local legislation here. And I know from the association, when we were talking about it at some of the delegate and quarterly meetings, other areas were not able to do that. They don't have that rapport with the legislators to say, hey, if I call you, Seth, and say, hey, I'm doing this, where you look at you. You came to my house,
right,
to sit here.
I'm in Brett's basement. Help me!
You're sitting in my beer recording room.
Right.
But that's the rapport you can build. That's the relationships.
Well, but what happened here was you guys took the bull by the horns, and it takes a lot of work.
It does take a lot of work.
So
it's a lot of coordination. Kudos to their staff members for doing it. Mm-hmm.
Well, the amazing thing to me about York and your meetings from the beginning was the attendance of the legislators at that meeting. You pretty much always get 100% when you had them. Now, there was a break through COVID there that you
we didn't do anything. And then this past year was the first time in, I think it was 4 years since I had one.
Yeah.
So the point is that the way you structured those meetings is we have a panel of the legislators. I get up there as kind of the moderator. We just start going through some of the issues, let everybody talk or ask questions. Like the one you just had, back in May, I guess. April,
I think it was. You didn't make out.
I wasn't there. Yeah,
you were the only one there.
Yeah.
And Senator Hill, she was the only one that's been there before.
Right. That's how new. Right. That's how new.
The rest of them were all new and have never been there before.
Right.
So one of the subjects we had at that meeting was, I've heard about this bill for years, we still haven't got it done, is that bill that would basically put a structure around what a shop does if the owner of the shop doesn't pay for the repairs. Mm-hmm. There's no real process in Pennsylvania how to deal with that.
Other than the abandoned vehicles or a court-ordered title, which is a pain in the butt.
Right.
So we had a bill introduced in the Senate, and we explained that bill to that group of legislators back in April.
Oh, they had a ton of questions.
Yeah, but it was great. Because that, on its face of it, looks like you're going to be taking somebody's vehicle away.
Yeah.
Remember, several of those some of the House members said, well, I can support that. Senator Hill announced that she would sign on to the bill, which she did. But we could have had 100 hearings on the issue across the state. It was that rapport that was built because of the atmosphere there non-threatening. Everybody got a chance, right? So that's, and then to translate that through the years, one thing I'd have to compliment the York County delegation in general, whether it's your predecessors or the people that are now. There really is a very responsive group, particularly to small businesses. And you could just see that every time you have these meetings. And I always thought they came down because they wanted to hear me talk, but I think they actually came. I think they actually came for the fried chicken, frankly, at the Vikings.
Pretty good, too. It's pretty good.
But the fact is, you build up that rapport, and that carries over. Next time I see people I had never met before that meeting in the Capitol, see, that's the connection that you want to make.
And it's some people hold these meetings like it's a firing squad. Like,
why'd you do this? Why'd you do that?
Yeah, and it's the point is to educate, have an open discussion. What issues do you have? Can we help with? That's the overall goal, and that's how you run it. It's very refreshing. And let's say you're another part of the state, and you may not have that coalition with maybe some of your other. You can always do that. Bring legislators into your business. We like to go visit, get some photo. Might be a good promo for your business because it can end up in the newsletter going out to 68,000 people. Email blasts, the whole 9 yards. It's just a great way to do some outreach on your behalf and just build that relation. Because I mean, if it's hiring employees, like just finding a mechanic.
Oh, dude, it's so tough.
Think about that. You're a state licensed entity, right? So you have to have your certifications in the whole 9 yards. You're in competition with Detroit, who wants all of the work done at their shops and not the independents, right? So you have a lot. You're just a small business. You have taxes to pay. You have to work about workers' comp, unemployment, right? So you touch all of these things. It's critically important to have that discussion with legislators, whether it's just an unemployment compensation change or something, right? It's critically important to build that relationship, and so at least legislators have a little bit of understanding as to what you deal with on a day-to-day basis.
You mentioned it early on. You don't know everything.
Right.
John doesn't know it. I sure as hell don't know everything.
Right.
And this is a way to educate you. So coming to these legislative nights like we host is like an educational for you, because you don't know much about the automotive repair business.
Right.
And this is a way to inform you when John does come to you with a good or bad, hey, we're in favor or opposed to this.
Right.
Now you have an understanding of it. So they are critically important ways for any business or any association to host these, to get you educated,
right,
and make that connection and build that relationship. So I've only kept going what was built before me.
Right.
I guess I got a gift for gab, and maybe I don't know. Maybe it's my charming personality. I have no idea.
I think so.
I think that's probably at the top of the list.
But and like John said, and the other people across the state, and they could only get maybe one, if any, to come to a legislative night. And here I had 7, minus you, which you would have been there if you wouldn't have had a prior commitment.
Right.
The only one that wasn't there would have been the one that sat in Eugene's old seat. Carol did not make it.
Yeah.
But I had everybody there. And usually, like John said, it's usually a minimum of 4 or 5 of your constituent that shows up.
You also, you got to know legislators also talk.
Yep.
So when we get invited to stuff, we're like, oh my God, it's that again. Are we going to that? So there is discussion amongst ourselves. So like when this pops up, like the newbies, what's this? I'm like, it's great. They're great people.
Yeah, because Joe, I didn't even have. Thank goodness I printed all my papers out, but his office didn't reply.
Right.
And he shows up. I'm like, oh, okay. Here's a seat. I'll put your paper in front of you.
Right. But we talk. I mean, that's an easy one. Like go to that night. It's a great night. Salt of the earth people. They're just small business owners who just want to have a discussion.
We've tried to limit any, what you said, firing squad stuff.
Right.
That's why John kind of takes the helm and moderates it, because we don't want it to get out of hand, because it's not what it's about.
Well, the other thing I think for our members out there that are watching this, they are your business is probably among the most regulated businesses.
Oh
that are
my
out there.
gosh, yes.
Between the livelihood of most of the shops, of safety inspection and emissions, and then all the other environmental stuff you got to deal
Right.
with, and all the regulations in workers' comp and unemployment, all those things. I mean, if there's any industry that should be wanting to interact with the people that affect that, it's our folks.
Yes. So get involved.
And I think one of the challenges for us is, and I've seen it with other groups that I've worked for over the years, even there's a hesitation among some people that if I talk to my legislator, I'm going to say the wrong thing. Or I don't want to look stupid by not being able to articulate what an issue might be. And by having a group like that, like you had in New York, everybody's together, so people were comfortable. And you saw people that I hadn't seen before actually get up and ask questions.
Yes.
Good questions.
Yep.
So the point is that our job at organizing the grassroots, the more of those things we can have, the better. But we also have to, to the shops that are out there, get involved with us.
Yeah. And that's the importance of being in an association. You know, we can help with that. Right now, John, you know, benefits are not what they used to be.
Right.
I mean, you can get an insurance plan anywhere. You can get this, that, and everywhere. Right now, the biggest benefit we have is Mr. Kulig sitting to my left in Harrisburg to help us with certain legislation that will affect us as an auto repair or a business. That's one of the main benefits we have as an association right now. And this is a way we need to promote it. That hey, you need to become a member because this is how you get things done in Harrisburg.
Right.
And it's important. It's extremely important.
I think the other important part of this, and I'm going to be very, very clear in what I say here. So you've got the legislative side. You got the bills that are considered by the legislature. But you also, and I think it's all right to talk about this here, you also have every 2 years, he's running for office in the House. Every 4 years, the Senate, you're running for office. Now we do have a legal apparatus in terms of supporting people.
Yes.
But I remember when I first started lobbying, my first organization I worked for were the independent service station dealers. They had gasoline. You don't see as many around as you did back in those days. Different era. People got service station owners would put signs up on their property.
Right.
You know, to support candidates. Usually great locations. And, you know,
Oh, yeah. Corner. Yeah.
and assuming that the guy had a good reputation in town, it was considered a valuable thing. I'm not sure that's a easy thing for businesses to do these days.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go woke, go broke.
Yeah, well,
Right?
there's
Both
two-
sides. Cancel culture.
Yep, two things I don't normally talk is politics and religion. Now, if a customer comes in and wants to talk, I'll let them talk. I'm not going to oppose. I'll just discuss with them, but I'm not going to give them opinions one way or the other.
It's a very interesting point you made there, sir.
I just won't because, like you said, in Harrisburg, we all have our own thoughts. We have our own opinions, and sometimes it gets in the way.
Right.
You know, just let people talk and let them state their opinion, whether it's good or bad, whether you agree or not. Just move on.
Right.
And as far as putting, you know, I don't have a problem if Seth would call me, hey, you mind putting a sign up? No, I'll put a sign up. You know, but I'm not just going to come out and get them and put them up. But, you know, if somebody calls me, I think one of the local kids that I knew was running for the county treasurer spot. Andrew was running. Croft.
Yeah.
His mom messaged me. I'm like, yeah, go ahead, put it up. You know, and it's not saying I'm supporting one way or the other. It's just I'm helping that you guys get your name out there. Whether somebody comes by my shop, says, oh, you're going to vote for them, I'm not coming in there. That's a problem, buddy. You got a problem if you think that.
Right.
The point I'm trying to make is that none of this is ever easy.
It isn't.
But if you got an organization that has thousands of members, you know, we don't really endorse specifically. But because of conversations and working, we identify who the people are that are important
Right.
to the industry. And that doesn't mean they're going to always be voting yes for us. And I guess that we separate that from the issues. It's supporting people that have the frame of mind to understand, in your case, what a small business is.
Yep. And that's that's politics.
Right.
Unfortunately, it takes money to be in politics.
Right.
And how do you get money? By supporting supportive associations, fundraising events, stuff like that. And that's the nature of the business.
Right.
Period. It's just the way it is.
And it's very expensive to run campaigns.
I all the signs, the mailings, and
So certain seats, competitive seats in Southeast Pennsylvania, can go as high as $4 million.
oh,
State House.
I wouldn't even want to know what the
State
governor.
House seat,
I wouldn't
$4 million.
I wouldn't even want to know what the governor's race cost is, guys.
Millions. We may have another very expensive. So the second most expensive statewide judicial election was 2015, I think. This last Wisconsin one beat that. We may beat that Wisconsin one that just occurred on this next one. I mean, it's billions are spent annually on elections.
Wow.
Billions.
Wow.
Billions. And it's
Unbelievable.
some of it you can track.
Some of it you're not.
So
But the point is, in these elections, I mean,
It's important.
We're sitting right now with 101 Republicans and 101 Democrats
right in the House.
So you're dead tie. Now the Democrats, because of the rules, are still in control of the majority. But if you don't think elections mean something,
Mhm.
the dramatic change in policies
Right.
that both sides are the priorities. I don't know if you want to mention some of those, but
But a bill could die.
well, it's
Yeah.
more than that. It's what's put on the agenda.
Right. So
for
it's
these guys
really
running.
it's a changeover. So there's bills we never moved as Republicans that are now moving through the General Assembly.
Okay.
Some people may really like that. Others may really not like that. So you get a different kind of playing field of legislation depending on who's in charge.
Oh my.
Yeah, and I think about like Tornecker, right? He grew up in the Spring Grove area. He represents Adams County. He won by one vote.
One vote.
One single
see,
vote.
People, your vote does matter.
It does,
that's the
because
point.
you never know which election is that close election of which. So talk to a gentleman. He ran in a primary for the city seat, state house seat. He ended up losing by 16 votes.
16 votes.
He ran into 20 people who knew him and said they didn't vote because they thought he had it in the bag. Think about that.
And that's why, you have to stress the local elections are more important than
Far
the
more.
presidential
Far more.
election.
The school boards, township supervisors, county commissioners have more direct impact on your life
Than
than the president of the United
federal.
States.
Yes.
But I think it goes back to people view the president as like a king almost. Like it's like the most important because you're head of the nation. But we're in kind of an upside down, or we're supposed to be an upside down. Commonwealth, right? So the locals are the most important. Federal government should have the least power, least impact on people's lives.
Yeah, right.
That has changed drastically over since our founding fathers. But it's still that it has a lot of control. Like you want your road paved out front? That's the locals, right?
Yeah, I think I've only missed one or two elections.
Right.
I go, and I'll go in there and, mine's sitting back here off Fox Run Road at the church, and how many did you get? Well, we only had 50 today.
Right.
And I'm like, are you kidding me? Come on, people.
We had one of the lowest this last election primary in New York was pathetic.
Yeah.
It was like one of the worst turnouts in the state.
And I
For
don't
this county.
understand.
It was awful.
But yeah, your vote does matter.
It does. Absolutely.
It matters no matter what it is, because you may not like what's going on in Harrisburg or DC, but your vote counts on what can happen.
Right. And think about this. Even after you're dead, you can still vote in Philadelphia and Chicago. I mean, but you got to register.
I wasn't going to bring that up.
Can you register if you're dead and registered in Philadelphia? Can you also vote in Chicago?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like anybody can vote in Chicago from anywhere in the world. Dead, alive, fictional creatures.
One of the takeaways from our discussion today is that I hadn't really thought about is we got issues that we're going to be dealing with, obviously. We
Coming up,
always do.
yep. There's some stuff that we've heard down the pipeline.
So legislative nights, talking to the members out there, one of the strongest, I always felt one of the strongest parts of the organization was the chapters, which kind of, didn't meet as much through COVID. So you had that local, chapter in New York. I think it would take us organizing this, but encouraging our members to invite legislators to their shop and talk about the issues that way.
Right.
Yep. I remember when Todd Platts was elected to your district seat the first time. And actually, after Dad passed away last year, we were cleaning out and we found Todd Platts' red shirt which was our garage uniform with his name on it.
Oh, that's awesome.
And there's pictures. We still have the pictures of when he was in there. So it is. That's a cool thing that you guys, we get to come in, and whether it's my business or any business, and you get to see it for a day.
Right.
I remember getting the phone call from, was it Holly or your secretary that
Sherry,
and said, Representative Grove and Senator Phillips Hill would like to meet for you with coffee. And I'm like, oh shit, what did I do?
Yeah. Oh.
And then you presented me with those referendums from
That was very nice.
both the House and the Senate, which it tore me up.
Yeah.
Because I still remember you guys doing that for my dad when my mother passed away. So it was pretty special.
It was great what you did there.
Yeah. And we miss him. He's a great man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I the importance of doing this something like this is to let our members know that you as a representative are not forbidden to be talking.
Right.
Get out there and get in touch with your legislators. John can be reached too. And if you have issues or some of the stuff that we put out in communications that you don't agree with, by all means, let us know. We can relay that information to John, and then John can relay it up to Seth and the rest of the people in Harrisburg.
Right. And sometimes
it's supposed to work.
Right. And sometimes you want to get ahead of issues too.
Yeah.
If you think something's going to move, start that grassroots earlier so it's less effort when it's up and moving through the process. Because sometimes they want to move stuff pretty quickly.
I know there was one that came up last week from PennDOT. And I just happened to be away, and I was in at the shop Friday morning because we're on a 4-day work week now. And I get an email from John, call me. And it had to do. It went pretty quick. It got launched on Saturday, and it's now public to the most part.
It wasn't a bill. It was a change in the emissions program that PennDOT did. But to your point, important part of my lobbyist job is, to your point, to keep in touch of the nuances of what's happening, what people are talking about. Man, I don't want to give you the impression that I spend all day sitting in the cafeteria in the Capitol. But it's amazing if you're sitting there watching who's talking with whom and who's, this and that. And you start picking up from other people, well, they're going to do this tomorrow.
Right.
Over there, they're going to do this. Or who's angry. Is the Senate angry with the House or vice versa?
Right. That happens. I tell you, it's a big high school. It's a big high school.
It's that kind of stuff, though, that can make the difference depending, to your point, of staying ahead of an issue or not.
Right.
And you talked about your campaigns. You have to do it every 2 years.
Every 2 years.
Oh my goodness.
Keeps you on your toes. Actually, that's the biggest thing my family usually talks about, like my father-in-law and stuff. They're like, it's just too short. It's just too short. How do you do it? And I'm like, the founders had an idea of what they wanted, and they delivered on it, right? So they wanted a house up every 2, close to the people, like kind of a little more gung-ho, like we got to go do stuff. Got to go do stuff. And then they have the Senate, U.S. Senate 6 years, Pennsylvania Senate's 4, so kind of longer term, more thoughtful. We got time. Let's slow this down a little bit, So it sets up a nice little slowdown. And our system's set to be slow. It always has been, always will be. which is very frustrating when you have that instantaneous gratification of today's society, right? Like, what do you mean it's going to take 3 hours to fix my car?
Yeah.
Right? Well,
I saw it on YouTube. You can do it in 10 minutes.
right. So the best is I feel awful for the police, right? You have the crime shows, they solve major crimes in half an hour, like a break-in, they have the full forensic team. Like none of that stuff exists. So sometimes we have very odd reality of what actually happens. Like it is a good thing. It's designed to be slow because I can tell you when we do things fast, things get screwed up, things get missed, and that's usually where we have major problems.
I think I remember the one legislative night we had. I think it might have been my last. When did Scott Wagner run for governor? 17 or 18?
Wolf's reelect 2016. Is that 16?
So he was still holding the Senate seat. So so she got elected in 18. So he was still the senator.
Yep.
And I remember he had talked about the budget then and going through it. And you were helping him from the House side. And you were talking about, well, what's this doing here? What's this doing underneath here? So just that kind of stuff. That's the honesty that you need out of our people in Harrisburg.
Right. Looking under the hood of the state budget.
You know, and the negative the negative campaigns that come out.
Listen,
I tune them out. They're all bullshit.
I know. If they wouldn't work, they wouldn't be done. So there's some perspective. I've never liked them. I don't like them. I've never done it. I like to talk about what I've done and what I want to do. You know.
And what I was going to go with that is, you know, let's just take, for instance, this last governor's race. Whatever snippet they took out from Doug's campaign or that he voted against, I said, people, whatever that bill was, there was probably stuff underneath that bill, and that's why he voted against it. I guarantee you there was stuff under that bill that shouldn't have been in there.
Right.
That's where I was going with that point.
Right.
So just because they see it on TV, hear it on social media, blah, 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 it's not the facts.
Right. And both parties will set up votes to get you on the record voting against something.
Yes.
Right. It's just... It's a setup. You never win. Like I tell new members, like you can vote yes and you can vote no on any bill at any time. They're still going to send a mailer on how awful you are, no matter how you voted.
I don't like.
Literally doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Yes, no.
I don't envy your job, Seth. No way.
Well, you know, the other thing about this is, I can remember a staff person from one of the Senate leaders they're both friends years ago, tell me, even in the case of this leader, that he realizes every vote he makes, whether it's on an amendment or whether it's going to be on a bill, somebody's going to be dredging up things.
Right.
So it doesn't mean that legislators get frozen making those decisions, but it is much more, you know, thinking through things than probably you and I think.
Oh yeah, you guys are heavily scrutinized.
And now with social media, it's like instantaneously up on Twitter.
Yeah.
Seth Grove vote against puppies.
Yeah.
Automatically up there, right?
No wait. It's not Twitter anymore. It's
X. That's
X.
Right.
What's with the X?
I don't know.
They just change. I just like.
It's going to be hard for me to not say Twitter. It's going to be tough.
I have a Twitter account for the shop, but that was my social media people that put. I don't do anything on it.
Right.
I barely do anything on Facebook.
X.
So, John, anything last that you want to say? I mean, I appreciate this. I think we were very informative of kind of getting under the hood, so to speak.
That's a great line. That's well done there.
Of what a legislator actually does and under the hood of what our lobbyist does.
Right. No, I just very much thank the chairman for being here, spending the time.
Yes, this is great.
And consider you a friend over the years and continue to do so. And it's always, you see him, wave, how you doing today? But just knowing that we can go to the chairman with issues, and not saying, it may not be something that they can always do, but certainly understands us. And that's all you can really ask for.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're very valuable. Appreciate you being here today.
No problem. Thank you, John.
Yeah, how many people can reach out and say, "Hey, Seth, you guys want to do a recording with me?" And I know Senator Hill would have been here,
Right.
if she didn't have something that she was running behind on getting here. I know not a lot of people could say I got a senator and a representative in my house.
Right. Right. I just hope it's legit. Like, hey, you want to come podcast? It's in my basement. You want to come podcast in my basement?
Well, this is the first podcast I ever did. So.
Right.
That's good.
But you see, we have the report and know, like, I'm not going to get locked in a hole with some dude with a little white dog and put the lotion in the basket, right?
Hey, dude, I heard you were voting this way tomorrow. Yeah. You're not voting.
You're not leaving.
I got people. I do appreciate it, Seth. I know you by first name, so I just Seth. I have a hard time saying Representative Grove.
I like Seth. I like Seth.
And you're just a normal person. You just got a different job, and so don't be afraid to reach out to, whether you live here in York County, reach out to your local legislation.
Right.
Get involved in association, no matter what it is, because it does all make a difference when it comes to how your everyday business is going to be run here in Pennsylvania.
Amen.
It does.
Yep.
And by all means, get out and vote at all the local areas, especially the local is more important. But don't wait to every 4 years to go vote for the presidential. That's one. There's elections going on twice a year usually.
Right.
So you'll know it when the mail starts coming in and all the stuff's in there. Right. So make your voice count, because like Seth said, that was just one vote. One vote that determined that election.
Right.
So I appreciate John you coming down here. We'll get this put out. Seth, I appreciate it. Good. Make sure you check out Seth Unleashed.
Yep.
On YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Was it Spotify? You're probably on.
Yeah,
if you're doing Spotify. You're on Apple, Google, and all that.
Yeah.
It pushes it out. So yeah, check it out.
Yeah.
So appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep.